Hey everyone, I'm Scott from Pomerol Partners. We've recently made a marketing intelligence application available for download from the Click Market, and in this short video I'm going to show you how to load your own customer dataset into the application. And then once we have our own customer dataset loaded in, we're going to leverage the RUF provided marketing intelligence API to bring back a sample of demographic data relating to our customers. And we're also going to bring back a sample of banking and finance related behavioural indicators just to demonstrate the functionality and the power of the API. So to get started, ensure you have ClickSense installed locally on your desktop. It's a free download from click.com. If you haven't already, head to the Click Market website, log in and download the Marketing Intelligence ClickSense application. Make sure you save this to the correct folder on your desktop so that it appears in the hub when you're opening up ClickSense on your desktop. Now, soon after downloading the app, you'll receive a follow-up email from Pomerol providing you with a trial API key and a few other pieces of info that you'll need in order to configure and use the API. We'll also send an Excel file called RUF Data Dictionary, and this is going to be loaded into your app, and it'll provide explanations and definitions of the personas and Connex cluster IDs that are going to be returned by the API. So the first thing we need to do here is we need to open up the load script editor, and we need to create two new data connections. Now, one of these is for the REST connector, and one of the data connections is going to point to a folder on our desktop where we have our customer data and the data dictionary that I mentioned earlier. I've actually created these two connections earlier, but let me just show you what they involve. So the first one is CRM data, and this is pointing to a folder on my desktop, and it has my two files in it. So we're going to save that. And the second one is the RUF API REST connector. And the way we've set this up here is we have a sample URL here, and I'll show you where to get that in just a minute. And we've set the authentication schema to basic. So those are the only two things we've done, and then we've labeled this REST connector connection RUF API. Now, in order to set up the URL, what we need to do is we need to refer to the connector API tab in the load script. And you'll find the sample URL that we can insert into that box just here. So the first thing we need to do is we need to actually replace the customer dataset that's currently loaded into the app with our own customer dataset. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to CRM data. I'm going to go and find my sample dataset I've got here, ABC Mortgage Brokers. I'm going to select this dataset and load this in. Now what I need to do is I need to find the equivalent values for customer ID, first name, last name, email, and so on. I need to find the equivalent values in the preloaded dataset here. So the first one we've got up here is record ID, and what I have in my customer dataset that the unique for a unique identifier is customer ID. So I'm just going to replace these values as I find them. So this one here is first name, and here's first name. You can see these two here are listed as optional, and I don't have these in my data set, so I'm just going to comment out these optional ones that I'm not going to load in, and because I don't need them. The ones that have required beside them, these are mandatory in order to provide the correct inputs for the API. So I also don't have a middle name in my data set, but I do have a last name, so I'm going to go down, I'm going to find that one here, last. And I'm just going to carry on with this all the way through to the end. Okay, so what I've done here now is I've loaded in all of my fields from my data set. I'm going to copy the file path here and make sure that we're loading from my data set. And then what I've done here is I've commented out all of the fields that were being loaded in that I don't have in my data set and that are not relevant. But what we can see here is that all of the ones that are commented out are listed as optional, so this is going to work well with the API. I also have longitude and latitude coordinates in my data set. I've geocoded them earlier based on address. These are not mandatory for the API, but what they will do is drive some geospatial analysis in the front end, which is very powerful and very helpful if you can access the longitude and latitude coordinates for the customer addresses. Okay, so the next thing we need to do here is we need to configure a few of the variables for the API connection. So we've got 4 different variables that we need to set up, and these have been sent in the confirmation email. The first one is the API key, so we're going to paste that there in quotation marks, and then the other 3 variables below. Now the piece of load script below here is simply just building the API query, the URL, 1 parameter at a time. So there's nothing else that we need to do here. On the next tab here, all we're doing is just reformatting the data that's been returned by the API query. So at this point, we can save the application and we can hit load data. Okay, so we can see that the application is now successfully loaded. We can see it's loaded in our 200 customer records and the script is finished successfully. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And now we can open back up the front-end dashboards for our app. Okay, so what we can see here is we can see our 200 customers have loaded in. We've pulled back a range of demographic data on our 200 customers. 32% of the households have children, 66% are homeowners. We've got the split here between renters and homeowners. Our longitude and latitude coordinates have allowed us to plot our customers out over the Overland Park area. We've broken them down by age bands and also income distribution. And then we can also go ahead and look at some of the banking and finance metrics that we've pulled back. We've pulled back 10 different data points here, or 10 different Connex clusters. And for each of those questions that we've pulled back on a customer, we've got a score between 1 and 10. 1 is indicated as positive or very likely, and 10 being unlikely or negative. So for example here, we've got have a small business loan. We can see that about 2/3, 3/4 of our customers fall between 1 and 5. So we can say that our customer base is very likely to have a small business loan. Acquired a first mortgage in the last year, we can see that most of our customers are around the 2 and 3 decile mark. So once again, very likely to acquire a first mortgage in the last year. So we can apply the similar logic to the other 8 banking and finance metrics that we've pulled back using the API. So I hope this has provided a useful introduction into how you can leverage the RUF Marketing Intelligence API to enrich a customer dataset. If you're needing any technical assistance with getting your own customer dataset loaded into the ClickSense app, feel free to get in touch with Pomerol Partners and we can give you a hand on that. Likewise, if you need any further information on what other types of data can be brought back using the RUF API, get in touch with Pomerol Partners and we can send across some further information on the many thousands of different data points that can be used to enrich your CRM dataset provided by RUF. So that concludes this video. Thanks for your time and thanks for your interest in the Marketing Intelligence application.